Hi, guys. Welcome back to Choose Love Anyway. I'm Dina,
And I'm Dalia.
and this is episode 8. Every week, it sounds crazier and crazier, but this week, we are going to be talking about repair accountability and what a real apology looks like. I am looking at my little notes because I am going to be interviewing Dalia this week, which is going to be kind of fun. But also, if we're being totally real here, it has been kind of a mess trying to record this episode tonight because, we always promise to keep it authentic. And it is currently 10:10 p.m. where I'm at because we have a 3-hour time difference. And Dahlia is incredible and being such a super mom and a super wife right now because her husband is away for the week. And so her girls are just entertaining themselves right now upstairs. So if they come down and we have some interruptions, that is why. Or if the episode seems a little bit chaotic, that might be why. But we are going to find beauty in the chaos because I think chaos has a bad rep. And I think it's just an opportunity to really surrender and go with the flow, which is exactly what we're trying to do tonight. So I'm going to give you a little layout of this episode. And because we are under the circumstances that we are under, maybe it'll be great for us to actually keep the episode short and sweet, but thorough because this is a topic that has changed our relationship. It's one that has transformed our entire family's relationship. It certainly has transformed the way that I am with my friends and those around me, really anybody and everybody. So even with myself. And I am going to be interviewing Dalia because she is such a great example of this and has been so gracious to teach me by example and by explaining it to me. But a little rundown of what the episode's going to look like is we are going to talk about repair and accountability. We're going to talk about a topic that Dahlia often talks about, which is how we hurt those closest to us the most sometimes because we feel safest with them. And I think we also get hurt by those closest to us because they feel safe with us. And I think we all in an ideal world would feel safe with each other, but that would also come with hurting each other because we're human and we have that human side of us and we're all learning, we're growing. We all have wounds, we all have fears, we all have an inner child. So I think a lot of the times that shows up, but because we're in this adult form, we don't look at it or at each other the way that we would a little kid. We don't have as much grace or patience that we would with a child. And sometimes there's some of us that don't even have patience with children. So we're going to talk about that, what it looks like to choose love anyway when you hurt those closest to you. And we are also going to talk about something that I'm going to have you explain, Dahlia, which is the 5 apology languages. It's kind of like the 5 love languages, but it's the apology languages, which, in my opinion, I think that is equally, if not more important than the 5 love languages because an apology and how you repair conflict with those closest to you is truly what makes or breaks relationships. It is what makes or breaks trust. Is literally how you either evolve or you end a relationship. I think when you are at a crossroads or you have conflict and how you handle the situation and whether you choose to repair or not and keep going is really fundamental and telling for the type of relationship you have and whether it continues on or not. So, Talia, would you like to explain what the 5 apology languages are and how you came across this quiz?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you for opening up the episode beautifully. And thank you so much for being awake right now and doing this. I am so grateful that we're able to just roll with the punches and the realities that we're in right now. I'm so grateful to be here with you. And actually, as I was reminded yesterday, I went to a day retreat, a yoga day retreat, and we did a rite of the womb ceremony. And I remember the last time I did that was with you, and I got to give you the right. But the very first rite of the womb I ever did, which was years ago now, and the thing I was releasing in that one was like the wounds in our relationship and kind of releasing you. And I was just reminded, and I was so grateful for seeing where I am now, years later of how our relationship's at the healthiest, most beautiful place that it's been. And I would love to talk on a different episode about these ceremonies and these experiences because they're so gorgeous. And I also just want others to know about this community in Orange County as I move away from this community. I just want others to have this and to know these amazing women. But I feel like a big part of our relationship has been this repair tool of us being able to see each other and hold each other accountable and then holding ourselves accountable for the ways in which we maybe unintentionally hurt each other, but also we had to look at ourselves in the mirror and be like, I am doing this. Even if I'm not intentionally doing this, this is what I'm doing from a subconscious place or whatever. And some of these spiritual modalities and these rituals and beautiful ceremonies and therapy have been so helpful. And I just got to reflect on that yesterday and it was really beautiful. So it's really sweet that we're doing this today. Because I feel like this is probably the number one tool I would say. If you can't do anything else, repair is everything. It's being able to say, I'm sorry, because we weren't modeled that growing up. And I think that's been really beautiful to even learn that as a family now, like you said. And so going to the five languages, like you asked me, is I learned about it a couple years ago when I was listening to a podcast that I love. And this woman who's a therapist, she had been starting to do some research and she reached out to the man who wrote the five love languages. She was like, I feel like there's something about the apology languages that feels really important too. And so they started to do a research project and mean to come up with five, and they jokingly said that, but that's what they came out of their research with. And I found it to be such a beautiful thing because I think it's the most gracious thing, but I'm always looking for ways to incorporate more grace, more compassion, more love. So once they discovered there was five, they went ahead and wrote a book about it. And when she was sharing about this on the podcast, I found it to be such an empowering tool because I think so often I had wished in my family that we had taken accountability for our actions. Like I wish I'd known how to apologize. And I think it's such a brave thing to do to apologize. And so I also really love that there could be a way that you could say the apology that the person actually needs. So it's like love languages, right? If you don't feel that love that way, then you try to learn what the person's is so that you can say it in a way that they receive it. So an apology is so similar. I know some people have felt like, oh, that apology didn't feel like it meant anything. But when you learn the five different parts of the five apology languages, you learn that, oh, there's different ways. And if you say it differently, someone will receive it maybe more deeply because it means more to them. And what we learned is most people don't actually, at least in our lives, don't actually need you to say, I'm sorry. They want some of the other things that go with that. But I think that just knowing how to do something is always empowering for me. And so then at that moment, I decided to send it to my siblings and to my in-laws. And I hadn't done it to a bunch of my friends, but now as I'm with my friends, I'll have them take it sometimes if I don't already know how they like to be apologized to, because I think some people don't even know, especially people who are people pleasers. I learned that so much in my own relationship with my husband. It really helped us in my marriage, and it's still something we work on. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah, and actually, as you were talking, I was thinking even between love languages or apology languages, it all comes down to somebody feeling seen. I think that when you apologize correctly, you make somebody feel seen because it's like, oh, you know me personally. Like you see me for me, not just another body that you're saying sorry to, but you know how I need you to say sorry. You know how I need you to apologize. You know what it takes for me to feel that you saw what I see and how I feel what I feel. It's honoring the way that you hurt my feelings and validating that I'm not crazy, but that you actually did do something that made me feel in a way that I don't want to feel again and that you don't want to make me feel again, ideally, right? So thank you. So my first question is, how would you say your apology to your husband, to your children, to your friends, to your family, to a stranger on the street, how would you say that your apology to all of those people is either similar or different? And if they're not similar or if they are not different, that's okay too.
I like this question, but I actually feel like I have a really simple answer, which is I think that my apologies are the same. But I think that as a recovering people pleaser, tend to like to not need to apologize to people that I don't know super well or I don't want to offend. But I am learning that recently that I'm starting to need to do it more often because I'm starting to express myself more authentically. I think I kind of have a formula, not that it's not genuine, because also if for some people, like for my husband, it's a bit of a different apology than maybe like you would prefer. But generally, I like to conclude all of the five languages. I like to cover all the bases because I think that makes for like a complete apology in my eyes.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I hope that answers the question.
No, that does. And I think that this is a good time actually when you say include the 5 apology
Yes.
languages. Now is a good time to list out what they are. And I feel like they're kind of self-explanatory. And obviously, we're going to include all the links in this podcast episode. Dalia, you do an amazing job of that. Thank you so much. But this is the different types of apology languages that are out there. So it's accept responsibility, planned change, make restitution, request forgiveness, and expressing regret. I think both of us, maybe it's the easy breezy genius, I don't know, but I think the people that are more sensitive, I think we tend to pick up on energy and we have this gift, but it's also kind of a little bit of a curse because we can feel things before they're even said and we're kind of intuitive about what a person is needing. So I feel like even without my friends taking this quiz, I feel like I can sometimes gauge, oh, this person likes for me to take accountability. This person likes for me to express remorse and regret. Or this person just wants to hear how I'm going to do better. You know, this person wants to know that I recognize what I made them feel and how sorry I am for that and that that wasn't my intent. And I think that that's kind of what you're talking about. In a lot of ways, I like to do all of it. I think taking ownership, having a plan, like that, if you include all of them, you can't really go wrong. But I think there's some that you can focus on or talk about first, depending on what a person needs.
Yeah, and actually, can I give an example?
Mhm.
Is that okay? My top 3 are plan change, expressing regret, and accepting responsibility. And so if I was to come up with one that's including all of those 3, let's say, it would sound like, "I'm really sorry I snapped at you earlier. That wasn't fair. I realize I was stressed, but that's not an excuse. Next time, I'm going to take a pause instead of reacting like that." And that covers the 3 that are most important to me, and that's just an example.
And then I guess this isn't a question I have on here. I'm just curious right now as you say that. What do you do if a person either does the thing that they say, like the plan change, or doesn't?
It's a great question. I would say that just because you know how to give that apology and just because you say what your plan change is, doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. So I think it's allowing for grace on both ends because that's what repair is for. I think as a parent, it's been like my superpower. If you're not going to be able to utilize any other tool, I think repair is probably the most important because you're going to constantly have to repair within a relationship because you might constantly disappoint someone. And if that's true that like our role here on earth is to disappoint others and to be disappointed because that's a part of being human, then I think repair is this medicine for that. And apologizing and taking accountability and owning the behavior and showing how you are going to try to make it better. But that doesn't mean you're going to be perfect. So whoever's on the other side of that apology, like for me, we're going to have hard days and me and my husband try to show each other grace because we see the hard days that we each have. And that's the like safety and the love that's there, which I'm so grateful for. But with your kids, you're with them all the time. Whereas with other people, maybe it's easier to not make the same mistake because you don't have as many chances with them where
Mm.
you're, I don't know, more dysregulated and all that. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it's kind of like they say if you go on 50 dates, you're going to have more no's than yeses. And if you go on less dates, you're going to have less no's than yeses because you've gone on less dates. It's because you have more opportunities to mess up, not because you messed up more. It's just because there was more opportunities to do so, I think is what you're saying. So like with people you're with more often, you're going to mess up way more often than the people that you see more rarely. And yeah, so I totally get what you mean. It's just, it's easier to be on your best behavior also with people that you see less. Whereas the people who see you 24/7, you're completely yourself around them. So, yeah.
see you in times where you might avoid people. Like when I'm PMSing, I get really severe mood swings during my ovulation and before my cycle starts. And so that's like always time where I tend to need to repair more often. And so I might also avoid other people during that time, but my family is going to experience me. But I never want them to feel that it really has anything to do with them. It's really mine. And I think that that's also a beautiful part. If it is actually something that someone else did to have you express some hurt or like blow up, then that's a time to share that. But you can also do it sooner by saying, hey, this really hurt me. I can feel that this is building up inside of me. This is what it is. And then that's giving them a chance to share. Both ways, it requires vulnerability. And I think vulnerability is where deep connection happens. And so I just really value the depth this brings in. And so when I sent a quiz to my in-laws and they're like, is this your way of trying to tell us that, we've hurt your feelings? And I'm like, no, you haven't. But I think it's wanting to have a deeper relationship with them. So it's like, hey, I know that I'm probably going to hurt your feelings sometimes, and you might hurt my feelings. And here's a way that we can be more connected and have a deeper connection. Because with everybody in my life, I want to have a deep connection. Like I really want to have a soul to soul human connection and to really witness each other and not kind of like play pretend. And I think that acknowledging that someone has hurt us, which I haven't always done, I haven't always acknowledged that someone has hurt me. Because if I don't acknowledge that they've hurt me, then they don't have a reason to apologize. And then that I think is kind of a missed chance for a deeper connection. Because repair, I think, brings you closer together oftentimes. At least that's been my experience.
I totally agree. I think if you can have both people willing to show up and be safety for each other or not define each other by those experiences and see that they actually do want to make a change because they're expressing it and seeing that even in the slightest effort, like, yes, you might mess up again, but maybe the apology comes sooner, or maybe, like you said, you kind of can predict that the behavior is going to happen and you say, hey, I'm sorry, I don't want to repeat that again, but I feel myself very at risk of doing so, you know? And I think you and I do that a lot. We're like, I'm sorry, I'm a bit snappy today, or I'm more irritable, or this. And it's so valid. Like, we are human. So I think going back to trust for me is what I was sort of thinking about when I asked the question is like, you apologize and you have this plan change, but are you actually going to follow through with it? And I think for me, I'm a big honesty person. I'm big with trust. Once you break my trust, it's really hard for me to trust you again. And I've noticed that this does take a lot of grace because I also realize I break trust with myself oftentimes, and I'm with myself more than anybody. And I think the more I don't define myself by my past and I just define myself by my efforts, which can be very small, but I think knowing and trusting that every small effort does make a difference, and also knowing that I do know my intentions. I'd like to believe that we're all intuitive enough to know whether somebody genuinely means what they're saying or not, and they're not just telling you what you want to hear. But
Yeah. Are they just like reciting something? And the
yeah.
truth is, someone can be, but it's crazy how even someone saying it, because for a while, I remember saying to my husband, like, he would say, I'm sorry. And I would be like, I don't know why. I just don't believe it. And I remember once my husband told me, he's like, I guess when someone apologizes, I just believe them. And I was like, oh, I think that I have this thing with distrust. I don't actually believe it, but it's because what makes me feel safer is knowing how that behavior is going to change. And maybe it comes from a place of control, but I think what was so validating about this quiz is that actually comes from somewhere inside of me that that's just the language I speak. And just because someone doesn't speak your language doesn't mean their language is wrong or your language is wrong. When we're talking about world languages, right? Like different cultures,
Mhm.
it's a way to learn about someone, and it's a sign of like respect and honor and love to learn someone's language and then speak in the way that they need you to speak with them.
I love that you said that about the differences. And I think that it is really interesting how somebody values a certain type of apology versus a different kind of apology. Somebody really might just need you to say, "Hey, I recognize I did that. I'm sorry." But somebody else might need you to say, I did this. I'm really embarrassed about it, and wants to know that you feel remorse and regret for what you did. Okay, so my second question is kind of a two in one, but I only am asking the second part because I grew up with you, so I know this. But it's how has your idea of an apology evolved over time? How has it changed? And the second part is, when did you realize that it was safe to take ownership and accountability for your actions and that it wasn't weak or dumb to admit that you were wrong?
It's a really beautiful question. I think I always wanted to have been apologized to because I was a sensitive child, but that wasn't modeled in our home. Usually, if your feelings were hurt, it was somehow put back on you, which I have grace for this, but it then ends up making you feel like you're responsible for everything when in reality we aren't. I think it really creates codependency. And so I think that when I stepped into my marriage, I really wanted a healthy marriage. So I started listening to a lot of therapists and read a lot of books. And even prior to that, psychology has always fascinated me. But I think I could see that something feels like it's missing. I think I also have always been on the more optimistic side. And so I think I've always been like hopeful that there was a way to heal and repair. It feels so peaceful and comforting when I take accountability and when I do repair that I think just doing that practice is seeing that it wasn't so embarrassing or that my ego wasn't so triggered. I saw how it repaired a relationship. And in the end, that's what I want. I'm a Libra moon. I love peace and unity and being able to coexist in a way that feels really genuine and beautiful. And so I think that is part of what helped me a lot.
Thank you for that answer. I completely agree. I think you really showed me how much more respectful it is to admit that you were the one that did something, not just respectful to the person that you're admitting it to, but how much more respect I have for somebody that can admit that they're wrong. Like, I swear that it's actually the strongest, most honorable thing that you can do. And I think it's something that when I've seen you do it, it made me want to do it more because I'm like, wow, it's giving high self worth. It's giving this really beautiful magnetic energy. I want to be able to own my stuff, to be able to admit that you did something wrong and owning what you did and taking accountability for it is like the most powerful, strongest, coolest thing that you can do, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people have that backwards. I think that we have this fear, and I know I used to, that if I admit that I did something wrong, that somehow makes me worse or
Mm.
weaker or a bad person or discredits me in some sort of way. And I don't know, like giving my power away. And it's a pride thing and an ego thing. And yes, you have to let it die. And it really hurts at first. But the reward afterwards is so life changing and it feels
Mm.
so good. I really feel like it's one of those things where it feels like you were underwater suffocating and you were suffocating yourself because you just didn't want to let your pride down or your ego die. And then you finally admit that you were wrong and take ownership for what you did and recognize it and just admit to it. And it's like you can breathe again. It's like this huge, big breath of fresh air. And it is so liberating both to you, but it also opens up this beautiful opportunity of connecting and repairing. And I think that's where connection is built from conflict. So the next question is, what do you think is the hardest thing about taking accountability?
Think I hadn't actually experienced that part in a while because I think when the person in front of you is safe, then I think it's pretty easy to take accountability, especially if I know I deeply love the person. My daughters are like the easiest to say sorry to because I see their little faces. And if I've hurt their feelings, it's so easy to apologize. But like my mom and my grandmother were in town recently, and I hadn't liked how I had spoken one time. I'd spoken very passionately, and a topic of politics had come up, and I knew that I needed to take accountability for myself. I don't think they expected it or even wanted it, but I think their soul on some level wants that. And I think in that situation, they probably could have apologized as well. But I just knew something inside of me, like my own integrity was like, I have to take accountability and I want to because I want to repair this because I want a deeper connection. But it's gonna be hard to do it, and I could feel the little girl inside of me that was probably one of the first times that it was kind of hard. And then there was another time where, like, I was agitated maybe a little bit with my husband, and I felt like it was something he did that was making me feel that way, but I wanted to show an example to my daughters too. We like to repair in front of our daughters. If we ever sound like we're having a disagreement or we're, discussing something and it sounds like we're not on the same page, or I've said something to hurt his feelings or something and our girls heard it, even if they didn't hear it, I like to repair in front of them because I like to set that example. One, I think it's important to see your parents have conflict and be able to repair it because I think it's just a part of life. I think I always thought that, like, oh, if two people really loved each other, there would be no conflict. And that wasn't realistic because what I've learned is that is just a natural part of life and there's no shame in it and there's no guilt in it. And so it's usually not hard for me to take accountability because I have no shame in that part of it. And also, I wanted to say this earlier about something you were saying, but for me, I think it's easier to have accepted or started to utilize that tool because me as a human, I can get my feelings hurt pretty easily. I feel like it's less now as I've become a grown up and I can feel like I'm less at the mercy of others, but I can totally see how someone would get their feelings hurt. I'm able to separate myself and the person pretty easily. Like I could see how what I was saying there could hurt someone while also holding that reality that that might have not been my intention, but that's not even really important in taking accountability. They don't really need to hear the reason why you just hurt their feelings. It's that, oh, I could totally see how me saying that hurt your feelings, even if it wasn't the intention. And I think my husband, I learned that pretty early on too, where we would stop saying, like, oh, I didn't intend for that, because that really doesn't even matter. It's just that's what happened. And I think it's just holding the person's feelings and centering them and their feelings versus you needing to explain it like that's what your ego needs. So I think I would say that that was easier for me to do because I had the experience so often myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like you wanted it so badly from others that you started giving it to others. And I guess it kind of goes back to be the change you want to see. So
Yeah.
you led the way and it worked because I feel like our family has absolutely changed and absolutely takes way more accountability. And you have certainly changed my heart and my ways of being and not being scared to just be like, yeah, I'm fully owning that. And it is honestly a confidence booster. Like if you feel like you're a person that is insecure or you don't think you're insecure, but your actions might show that you're insecure because you don't like to take accountability and you feel very reactive to the world around you, try taking accountability and see how that changes your life. That's an invitation, not an obligation, but really it is life changing. And I feel like you and I do so well with that. And I'm so proud of
Mhm.
us. I think that's why it feels so in this flow state because Dalia and I think we're more dysregulated than we aren't. Like we both have like your mom to twins. You have a lot going on. I feel like I'm always on the go and I'm working on my sleep, but also we feel safest with each other and we're most honest with each other. So we kind of are a little bit more snappy sometimes, but we both have learned what we both need to hear. Like I'm more of one that's like, I need to know that you know how I'm feeling. And I think you need to know that what I said hurt your feelings, which is such a tiny little change. Like they
Mhm.
almost sound exactly the same, but I think one is like, I'm validating your feelings about what I did. And the other one is, hey, I said this and I know it hurt your feelings. You know what I mean? But, anyways,
Mhm.
that brings us to our last topic, which is the 5 apology languages. And
Mhm.
we did a little bit of research. We sent it to our siblings, our mom, and then I had a few boys take it. In conclusion, we realized that most people really wanted to see planned change. And it's interesting because it was either plan change or accept responsibility. I think the least one across the board was requesting forgiveness, which is interesting because, people saying I'm sorry, it just doesn't really do much for me. You said something earlier in a text message with you, Brooke and I, that was super good. It says, it's also so interesting to me that most people don't actually want to hear I'm sorry. They more want to know that something will change moving forward and hear that someone feels remorse/regret for hurting them.
Yeah. It doesn't entirely surprise me, but I think I knew that that's what I wanted. But learning that, I realized others want this apology. And that's why that's what naturally comes out of my mouth. So, for the people, at least in my circle and in my life, I've learned that they kind of like a similar apology style that I do. And it's holding their feelings, validating their feelings always, and then being like, I'm so sorry I did that. I'm going to try and do this moving forward. Because for me, for the little girl inside of me to feel safe, it's knowing that someone else is going to be tender with me and want to be a safe space for me too. And so for my husband, he doesn't need to hear that. So oftentimes it's hard. And he is still working on trying to say it that way of being like, I'm so sorry I did this, validating the feelings. He can do all of that. But it's the wanting to have the plan change. Because for my husband, sometimes he doesn't want to promise something if he can't deliver, because then he doesn't want to be a disappointment. So it hits on a wound that he has. And so then it's like, okay, but I'm not expecting perfection. There's a part of me that just wants to know that I will be safe moving forward. That if this experience was really painful for me, that I know that, you're going to try to change something, which I think is such a beautiful thing, because that's how we grow, is having people around us that we are then held accountable to because we love them and they love us. And I've heard it said before, in the faith tradition that I belong to, I believe in Christ. And one of my favorite therapists in my faith has said that one of the ways to become like Christ is being in relationship with someone, because you have to look outside of yourself. And I think it grows you up so much to like ownership for yourself and then to care about another person. So I don't know if that makes sense what I'm trying to say.
No, it does. And honestly, I was going to say, I went back to church for the first time this past Sunday, and they were talking
Yeah.
about remorse, but they were talking about saying sorry versus asking for forgiveness. It's like saying sorry is just, oops, sorry. But asking for forgiveness is acknowledging and taking ownership and accountability of what it is that you're sorry for and why you're sorry and how you came to be sorry. Like, how did you get there and how did you do that thing? And how are you not doing that thing again, or at least attempting not to? And so I guess all of this is to say that repair really is the result of two people who can be a safe space for each other and a safe space that allows growth and mistakes to happen. And I think the safety also comes from both people being able to take ownership for their own stuff, but then also hold space for the other person to take ownership without sort of being like, oh yeah, I'm glad you recognize that. You suck. Like you did that. That's also not what we're saying. When you say take ownership, it's like, I am deeply sorry I did this to you. And I think the right people are going to honor that versus take it and run with it and be like, well, you admitted that you did this wrong. See, you know that you're wrong. See, you know you're bad. Like that's not safety. That's probably not an aligned relationship, but that's
That
a whole
might be a
different topic.
sign. Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be a
Yeah.
sign for
But
that. Yeah. And we'll discuss that more in like
yeah.
a relationships episode.
But yeah, I guess just saying that taking ownership is the foundation of repair and taking accountability, and then having that plan change, even though you're probably going to mess up, it's still making your best effort not to. And the right people know your energy, they know your intentions, and just trusting in your own goodness and in the goodness of others. I know it's easier said than done. And then some closing points that I kind of journaled down just as I was reviewing everything that we were going to be talking about in this episode that I would like to share with you guys is an apology without change does not rebuild trust and sometimes breaks it depending on the situation. And then another point, we're all going to hurt people at some point and even ourselves. What matters is our willingness to repair, take accountability, and grow. And I think in order to do that, you have to be willing to let a part of yourself die, the part of you that hurt someone, and sit in the discomfort of not reverting to doing that thing again and actually doing better. Then over time, that becomes the new coping mechanism, and it is so much healthier and more productive. So I think just the plan change, if you are on the side of the one apologizing and taking ownership, just knowing that your plan change is going to require you to be uncomfortable. And as we all know, discomfort is where growth happens. Not snapping, pausing, going in another room, taking accountability, moving slowly, even if it's just a 10-second pause and counting from 10 to 0, just try that. Any little effort, I think, really makes a big difference over time. consistency compounds and the small little efforts compound into big changes.
I love that so much. Thank you so much, Dina, for sharing all of that and for this episode. I hope a lot of people already know about this and are already doing this. But if you're not, do your own research. Maybe take the apology quiz and then put it into AI and have it like tell you more about the results. And we'll include that in our episode details on Substack. And also, if you haven't been watching our episodes on video, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple and you prefer that, that's great. But if you also want to watch video, we have our episodes up on YouTube and Substack that comes with the video if you're interested in that. We both enjoy watching podcasts sometimes with video, and our podcast offers that. So if you wanted to check out Substack or YouTube, feel free to do that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, we are on all platforms, thankfully. Thank you so much, Dalia. I love you. I hope you have a great night with your girls.
Thank you so much. I hope you do too. And we'll see you next time. Bye.